The text came just after midnight. 4 words that froze Ethan Cole where he stood. "We're outside. It's freezing." He blinked at the screen, unsure if exhaustion was playing tricks on him. The message was from an unknown number, but the location tag attached stopped his heartbeat cold. Central Park. His penthouse overlooked it. He turned toward the window, city lights shimmering against the black winter sky. And there, in the faint glow of the street lamps below, a small figure sat on a bench. 2 smaller shapes huddled close beside her. Something in his chest twisted. He should have looked away, dismissed it as another random New York tragedy, but he didn't. He zoomed in on the camera feed from his building's security system, and that's when he saw her face. Clara Evans, the woman he hadn't seen or stopped searching for in 6 years, and the 2 children at her side. They had his eyes. By the time Ethan made it down to the park, the air cut like glass. Snow crunched under his shoes, each step echoing louder than the last. Clara didn't notice him at first. She sat rigid on the bench, her coat too thin, her arms wrapped tightly around the 2 sleeping children. The glow of her phone screen lit her face. Pale, tired, beautiful in the same way it had been the day she vanished. "Clara!" His voice cracked on her name. Her head jerked up. For a heartbeat, disbelief and fear collided in her eyes. "Ethan!" He stepped closer, every breath visible in the cold. "What are you doing here?" She flinched. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he shot back. "You're freezing. And those kids—" He looked at them, their small faces flushed from the cold. "Clara, come inside, please." She shook her head. "We'll be fine. Someone's coming for us." He crouched in front of her, meeting her eyes. "Who? The friend you texted? Because that message came to me." Her lips parted. Shock flickered across her expression. I must have sent it to the wrong number." "Then maybe the wrong number was the right one," he said quietly. 10 minutes later, they were inside the warmth of his penthouse, the elevator ride silent except for the twins' soft breathing. Clara's arms never left them, even when Ethan handed her a blanket and gestured toward the couch. "They can sleep here," he said gently. "There's a guest room down the hall for you." Clara hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not," he said, though the word tasted like a lie. She was everywhere in this space now. Her scent, her silence, the ghosts of what they used to be. He poured her a cup of tea and set it on the coffee table. "You disappeared without a word, Clara, and now I find you out there, in the middle of the night, with them." His eyes flicked toward the twins, who were curled together beneath the blanket. "Tell me what's going on." She stared into the steam rising from the cup. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "We had nowhere else to go. Everything I tried to build fell apart. The job, the apartment, gone. I was just trying to find shelter for the night. I didn't mean for you to see us." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You could have called me." Her laugh was brittle. "You think that would have mattered? You were untouchable back then. Still are. The billionaire who doesn't pick up calls from ghosts." "That's not fair," he said quietly. "You didn't even give me the chance." Clara's eyes flicked toward the twins. "I couldn't." There was something in her tone, an edge of finality, that made him step back. The truth hovered there, unspoken but sharp enough to hurt. He looked again at the children. One of them stirred in sleep, mumbling softly, and Ethan froze. The sound, soft, distinct, was the same small noise he used to make as a child when dreaming. "Clara," his voice was low. "They're mine, aren't they?" Her breath caught. For a long, trembling moment, she didn't answer. And then quietly, she nodded. "Yes." The word hit him harder than he'd expected. He sat down heavily, running a hand over his face. 6 years. 6 years of searching, of wondering what he'd done wrong, what he'd missed. And all this time, she'd been raising his children alone. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. Tears glimmered in her eyes. "Because I thought it would destroy you. And maybe I was right." He looked at her, pain flickering beneath the anger. "You should have let me decide that." She turned away, wiping her cheek. "It doesn't matter now. We just need a place to stay until tomorrow. Then we'll go." "You're not going anywhere," he said firmly. Clara stiffened. "Ethan, I'm not letting my children spend another night on a bench. She stared at him, uncertain, wary. You don't even know them. Then let me fix that, he said, starting now. Their eyes met, the air between them thick with everything left unsaid. For the first time in years, neither of them looked away. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the scars of the city in white. But inside that penthouse, inside the space where two broken hearts had collided again, something fragile, something impossible, began to thaw. Ethan barely slept that night. The image of Clara huddled on that frozen bench kept replaying in his mind, each repetition sharper than the last. He'd seen market crashes, hostile takeovers, and boardroom betrayals, but nothing had hit him like that moment when her eyes met his in the snow. Now, as dawn stretched pale light across the city skyline, he found himself standing in the kitchen, staring at two small mugs of hot chocolate cooling on the counter. Clara and the twins were still asleep in the guest room. He didn't know what to do with himself. He was a man built on control, every decision calculated, every risk contained. But this was chaos he couldn't chart on any graph. He turned as soft footsteps broke the quiet. Clara stood in the doorway, wrapped in one of his oversized sweaters, her hair loose around her shoulders. For a second, she looked almost like the woman he used to know, before the years, before the distance. You're up early, she said softly. I never really went to sleep, he admitted. She glanced at the mugs. You made hot chocolate? For them, he said. Thought they might like something warm when they wake. Her lips curved, faint but genuine. You remember. He hesitated. I remember everything. They sat at the counter in awkward silence, two people haunted by a past that refused to stay buried. Finally, Ethan said, I want to know about them. Clara looked down, tracing the rim of her cup with her finger. You've already guessed most of it. I don't want guesses, he said gently. I want truth. She drew a long breath. Their names are Emma and Liam. They're 6. They love dinosaurs, pancakes, and making each other laugh. Emma's the brave one. Liam's the thinker. They've only known me. He absorbed that quietly. And me? You were a bedtime story, she whispered, the kind I couldn't quite finish. The words hit him like a knife he hadn't seen coming. Why didn't you tell me, Clara? Why disappear? Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't look at him. You think I wanted to? I tried, but your uncle made sure I couldn't reach you. Ethan's head snapped up. Richard? She nodded. He came to see me after I found out I was pregnant. Said he was protecting you. Said if I stayed, you'd lose everything your father built. He offered me money to disappear quietly. I didn't take it. But somehow, every message I sent, every call I tried to make, it never reached you. Ethan's pulse thundered. He lied to me. He told me you'd left for someone else, that you didn't want the life I could give you. Her voice trembled. I wanted you, Ethan. I just couldn't fight someone like him. For a long moment, silence swallowed the room. The city beyond the glass felt a world away, cold, distant, irrelevant. Ethan's knuckles whitened around his cup. He took everything from us. Clara's gaze softened. And still, here we are. A soft knock broke the tension. 2 sleepy voices followed. Mommy, can we come out now? Clara smiled through her tears. Of course, sweetheart. The twins padded into the room in oversized pajamas, blinking against the morning light. Ethan froze. He'd seen their faces before, in dreams and photographs that never existed, in the ache of wondering what might have been. Good morning, he managed, his voice rougher than he meant. Liam tilted his head. Are you the nice man from last night? Ethan smiled faintly. I hope so. Emma squinted at him. You have the same eyes as Liam. Clara tensed, but Ethan only chuckled. Do I? That must mean we're both special. The girl nodded solemnly. Maybe, but Mommy says no strangers. He met Clara's gaze, a flicker of pain behind his calm. She's right. He knelt down, careful not to get too close. But maybe we don't have to be strangers forever. Emma studied him, then smiled, a shy, uncertain smile that mirrored his own. Okay. Something inside Ethan cracked open. After breakfast, the twins played in the living room, building a fortress out of pillows and blankets. Clara watched them with quiet affection, her hands wrapped around a fresh cup of tea. Ethan stood a few feet away, leaning against the wall, afraid to move, afraid to break the fragile peace. He spoke quietly. "You're not leaving tonight," Clara sighed. "Ethan, please," he said. "You don't have to trust me yet. Just stay until I figure this out. Until we figure this out." She hesitated, looking toward the twins. "They like it here. But this world, your world, it's not ours." "It could be," he said softly. "It should have been." Clara turned back to him, her expression torn between longing and caution. "You think you can fix 6 years overnight?" "No," he said, "but I can start with breakfast." Her laugh was soft but real this time. "You never did know when to quit." He smiled. "Still don't." Hours later, when the twins had fallen asleep in the guest room, Ethan stood by the window again. The skyline glowed against the falling snow, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel cold. Clara joined him quietly, her reflection shimmering beside his in the glass. "You know this can't stay hidden forever," she said. "Someone will see. The press will ask questions." "Then let them," he replied. "I've spent half my life hiding from the truth. I'm done with that." She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "You really haven't changed." He turned toward her, eyes soft. "You have. You got stronger." Clara's lips curved. "You had to make do with less." Ethan chuckled quietly. "Then maybe it's time I finally earn back what I lost." Outside, the snow thickened, falling in heavy, quiet sheets over the city. But inside the penthouse, warmth began to spread, not from the heat, but from something far rarer. Forgiveness, slowly learning to breathe again. Morning sunlight spilled into the penthouse, glinting off glass and marble. The world outside was already in motion, cars streaming down Fifth Avenue, people rushing through the streets. But inside, everything felt suspended, like time had decided to hold its breath. Ethan stood in the doorway of the guest room, leaning against the frame, watching the scene unfold in quiet disbelief. Clara was still asleep, her hair fanned across the pillow. The twins were sitting cross-legged on the bed beside her, whispering to each other as they tried not to wake her. Emma was showing Liam how to braid a piece of red yarn into a makeshift bracelet. It was a simple domestic moment, but to Ethan, it was surreal. He'd spent 6 years building empires, managing crises, attending charity galas where smiles were currency. And all that time, the life he'd actually wanted had been here, growing without him. Emma looked up and spotted him first. "You're awake," she whispered excitedly. He smiled. "Looks like you beat me to it." Liam giggled. "Mom says early birds get pancakes." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Then I'd better start cooking before your mom wakes up and realizes I'm a terrible chef." Clara stirred at the sound of their laughter, eyes fluttering open. For a moment, confusion crossed her face. Then the memories rushed back. The park, the cold, Ethan. She sat up, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Morning," she murmured, her voice still rough with sleep. "Morning," he said. "I was just about to attempt breakfast. For everyone's safety, you might want to call for backup." Her lips twitched into a faint smile. "Backup's sleeping. Then we're doomed." An hour later, the kitchen smelled like butter and burnt edges. Clara laughed as Ethan tried to scrape the first batch of pancakes off the pan, the twins cheering him on with the unfiltered enthusiasm of children who thought disaster was entertainment. "Careful," Emma said. "It's smoking." "That's the secret ingredient," Ethan replied, coughing as smoke curled toward the ceiling. Clara stepped in, rescuing the pan from his hands. "Here," she said gently, her movements practiced. "You mix, I'll flip." He nodded, watching her work. The rhythm between them felt almost natural, familiar in a way that made something ache deep inside him. "You've gotten better at this," he said quietly. Clara glanced at him. "Motherhood will do that to you. You learn fast or they starve." He smiled faintly, though his chest tightened. "You've done a good job, Clara. Better than I ever could have." She looked down, hiding the emotion flickering across her face. "You don't know that." "I do," he said softly. "I see it in them." After breakfast, Ethan showed the twins his study, a glass-walled room overlooking the park. They wandered around, touching everything with the reverence of tiny explorers. Liam was fascinated by the model airplanes on the shelf. Emma, meanwhile, was drawn to the piano in the corner. "Do you play?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "A little. Can you show me?" He hesitated, then sat down. The keys felt foreign under his fingers. It had been years since he'd touched them, but muscle memory kicked in. A slow, gentle melody filled the room. Emma leaned against the piano, listening, her eyes wide. "That's pretty." "It was your mom's favorite," Ethan said quietly. Clara, standing in the doorway, froze. She hadn't heard that song in years. When he finished, Emma clapped, and Liam joined in, their laughter filling the space. For a brief, fragile moment, everything felt right. And then Clara spoke. "Ethan, we need to talk." He turned, sensing the shift in her tone. "All right." She led him to the balcony, away from the twins. The air outside was crisp, sunlight glinting off the snow-dusted rooftops. "You can't keep doing this," she said. "You can't act like everything's fine." He frowned. "I'm not pretending." "Yes, you are," she said, her voice trembling. "You think giving them pancakes and showing them toys makes up for the years you missed? But they don't even know who you really are." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then tell them." "I can't just drop that on them." "Why not? They deserve to know the truth." Clara met his gaze, pain flashing in her eyes. "And what happens after that, Ethan? You think you can just step in and play family? You have a company, a life in headlines, a world I never fit into. They need stability, not chaos." He stepped closer. "You think I can't be that stability?" She exhaled shakily. "I think you don't know how. Not yet." Her words stung more than he wanted to admit. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the twins' laughter drifted faintly through the open door. Finally, Ethan said quietly, "I can learn." Clara looked away, tears glinting in her eyes. "That's not something you learn overnight." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll start today." She didn't answer, but when he turned to go back inside, she didn't stop him either. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Ethan sat alone at the piano again. His fingers hovered over the keys, but no sound came. He could still hear Clara's voice, soft but steady, echoing in his mind. They need stability, not chaos. For once he understood what she meant. Money couldn't fix this. Power couldn't protect it. If he wanted to be part of their lives, he'd have to rebuild trust, not buy it. He played one quiet note, letting it linger in the silence. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. The snow had melted into a steady drizzle by morning, the city wrapped in gray clouds that blurred the skyline. Inside the penthouse, though, warmth lingered, a fragile kind, born of routine and unspoken effort. Ethan had taken the day off for the first time in years. His assistant's calls went unanswered. The board's questions deferred. Today wasn't about stocks or strategy. It was about learning to exist in the same world as Clara and the twins, without breaking the fragile balance holding them together. When he stepped into the living room, he found Clara crouched beside Emma and Liam, helping them piece together a puzzle of the solar system. The twins' laughter filled the space like sunlight cutting through glass. "Careful with the Saturn rings," Clara said gently. "They're delicate." Liam grinned. "Like Mommy?" "Exactly," she said, tapping his nose. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching them. He didn't realize he was smiling until Clara looked up and caught him. "What?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Nothing. Just, I didn't think I'd ever see something like this again." Her expression softened. "You could, if you stay." The words hung there, heavier than either intended. Clara quickly turned back to the puzzle, pretending not to notice the way Ethan's breath caught. By afternoon, the twins had migrated to the kitchen for science experiments, which turned out to mean mixing flour, water, and food coloring into sticky chaos. Clara tried to maintain order, but every attempt failed spectacularly. "Liam, that's not lava," she exclaimed, wiping splashes off the counter. "It's pink lava," he argued proudly. Ethan stepped in before another eruption could happen, rolling up his sleeves. "All right, scientists, how about we redirect the experiment to cookie dough?" Two sets of eyes widened. "Cookies? Best experiment there is," he said. "And bonus, you get to eat the results." Clara raised an eyebrow but didn't stop him. You're braver than I remember, he grinned. Comes with being a CEO. Risk management. As the twins mixed and laughed, Ethan watched Clara from across the counter. She was different now, steadier, more grounded. But the spark that had once drawn him in hadn't faded. If anything, it had deepened, sharpened by everything she'd endured. At one point, she caught him staring. You're burning them, she said, nodding to the oven. He blinked and quickly pulled the tray out, a puff of smoke rising like comic timing. The twins burst into giggles. Clara tried to hide a laugh but failed, and for a few seconds, the years between them dissolved into something dangerously close to happiness. Later, when the twins went down for a nap, Ethan found Clara on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea in her hands. The rain had slowed to a soft mist, city lights flickering through the haze. You've always liked watching the rain, he said quietly, joining her. It's the only thing that makes this city feel calm, she murmured. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. You know, I used to imagine this exact moment. She glanced at him. Us? Here? He nodded. You, me, maybe a couple of kids running around. I used to think that was all I needed to be happy. And what did you do instead? Built a kingdom, he said bitterly. One made of glass. Looks impressive until you realize how easy it is to shatter. Clara studied him for a long moment. You're not the same man I left. He turned to her. Good or bad? Just different? Softer, maybe. He chuckled quietly. Don't tell the board that. I won't, she said, but they'll see it anyway. A faint knock interrupted them. Ethan's housekeeper appeared in the doorway. Mr. Cole, there's someone here to see you. A Mr. Richard Cole. Clara froze. The color drained from her face. Ethan's jaw clenched. Tell him I'm busy. I'm afraid he insisted, the housekeeper said apologetically. Ethan sighed, his tone hardening. Fine, send him up. When Richard entered moments later, his smile was the kind that didn't reach his eyes. He was older now, his suit impeccable as ever, his charm polished like a weapon. Ethan, he said smoothly, you've been avoiding me. Can't imagine why. Richard's gaze flicked toward Clara, who had stepped back, her hands trembling slightly. Well, the prodigal returns. I didn't expect to see you here. Clara said nothing, her expression tight. Ethan moved between them. You don't get to talk to her. Richard raised an eyebrow. Protective, are we? You always did let your emotions get in the way of business? This isn't business, Ethan snapped. It's family, something you wouldn't understand. Richard's smile didn't falter, but his eyes turned cold. Careful, nephew. You're still tied to my empire, whether you like it or not. And if this little reunion makes the press, it won't be your heart that breaks, it'll be your reputation. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. Try me. For a moment, the tension crackled like static. Then Richard adjusted his cufflinks, smirked, and turned for the door. You've changed, Ethan. Let's see how long it lasts. When he was gone, the silence felt heavier than before. Clara finally spoke. He's the reason I left. The reason we lost everything. Ethan's expression hardened. Not for much longer. She looked at him alarmed. Ethan, don't do anything reckless. He met her eyes, his voice steady. It's not reckless if it's justice. As the city lights reflected in the rain-soaked glass, Ethan knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. The past had come knocking, and this time, he wasn't going to hide behind silence. He was going to fight for what he'd lost, and for the family he'd only just found again. Ethan didn't go back to work the next day. He couldn't. Richard's sudden visit had ripped open every wound Ethan thought had healed. All night, he replayed his uncle's smirk, his veiled threats, his quiet confidence. Richard had built the company's fortune on charm and deceit, and for years Ethan had been blind enough to believe in it. Now, with Clara and the twins asleep down the hall, Ethan sat alone in his office, surrounded by the relics of a life that suddenly felt hollow. Photos of awards, stock tickers glowing on monitors, a skyline worth billions, all meaningless compared to the sound of his children's laughter echoing faintly through the walls. He took a deep breath and opened his laptop. If Richard wanted to play power games, Ethan was ready. He began searching through years of financial data, hidden accounts, unexplained transfers, offshore shell companies that had seemed harmless at the time. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. Richard hadn't just manipulated him emotionally, he'd stolen from the company, from him, from everyone who trusted the Cole name. And Ethan had proof. By mid-morning, the penthouse was alive again. The twins ran through the halls in matching socks, their laughter bright and contagious. Clara followed behind, her hair tied up, a lightness in her step Ethan hadn't seen in years. "Breakfast is ready," she called. Ethan looked up from his laptop as she entered the office. The smell of toast and cinnamon drifted in, but her smile faded when she saw his expression. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. "Couldn't," he admitted. "Richard's been stealing from the company. Millions, maybe more." Her eyes widened. "Ethan, I'm not going to let him get away with it." She crossed her arms. "What are you planning to do?" He closed the laptop, meeting her gaze. "I'm going to expose him." Clara shook her head. "You can't just go to war with him. He'll fight back, and he'll drag you, and us, through the mud." "He already has," Ethan said quietly. "He's the reason you were forced to leave, Clara. He's the reason I missed 6 years of my children's lives." Her voice softened. "I know, but please, don't let your anger make you reckless." He leaned back, exhaling. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm done letting him control my life. I just want the truth out." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the city below. Then Clara reached across the desk and placed her hand on his. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "When it's over, walk away. Don't become him." Ethan looked at her, and something in her tone, quiet, steady, pleading, anchored him. "I promise." Later that afternoon, Ethan met with Marissa, his longtime legal counsel. She was sharp, loyal, and one of the few people Richard hadn't managed to manipulate. "This isn't just corporate fraud," she said, flipping through the documents Ethan had uncovered. "It's criminal, offshore laundering, falsified audits. He's been covering his tracks for years." "Can we trace it?" Ethan asked. "We can," she said, "but it'll take time. And once we move, he'll know. You'll need to be ready for retaliation." Ethan's expression hardened. "I've been ready since last night." Marissa nodded. "I'll start the process, quietly. But Ethan, this could get ugly. If he goes public before you do, he'll twist the narrative. Make it look like you're the one who orchestrated all this." Ethan leaned forward. "Then we'll make sure he doesn't get the chance." That evening, the twins sat curled up on the couch, watching a movie. Clara sat beside them, though her eyes often drifted toward Ethan, who stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, controlled, a tone she recognized from the man he used to be, but laced now with something new. Resolve. When he hung up, she asked quietly, "Marissa?" He nodded. "The investigation's underway." Clara hesitated. "Do you think this will really fix things?" He turned toward her. "It's not about fixing. It's about stopping the cycle." Her eyes softened. "You sound like a father." He smiled faintly. "I'm trying to learn." The twins turned then, giggling at something on the screen. Emma waved him over. "Daddy, come sit." The word hit him like sunlight breaking through clouds. He crossed the room and sat beside them, and as Liam leaned against his shoulder, something inside Ethan settled for the first time in years. He'd spent so long chasing the illusion of power that he'd forgotten what real strength felt like. It wasn't in boardrooms or bank accounts. It was here, in the warmth of small hands, in laughter that couldn't be bought. Clara watched him quietly, her expression unreadable but soft. When the twins finally went to bed, Clara joined Ethan on the balcony. The city glowed beneath them, endless and alive. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. He frowned. "Regret what?" "Everything. The company, the money, the way things turned out." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I regret believing I could build a life out of walls. All this," he gestured toward the skyline, "it looks powerful, but it's empty without someone to share it with." Clara's eyes glistened. "You've changed." He smiled faintly. "So have you." "Maybe that's why we found each other again," she whispered. He looked at her, and for a fleeting moment, the distance between them vanished. Then her phone buzzed. She frowned, glancing at the screen, and her face went pale. "What is it?" Ethan asked. She turned the phone toward him. On the screen was a message from an unknown number. "You should have stayed gone." The sender's name made Ethan's stomach drop. Richard Cole. Clara's hands trembled as she stared at the message. The glow of her phone screen reflected in her wide eyes, the words etched like a threat carved into glass. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. The rage that rose inside him wasn't loud. It was quiet, measured, the kind that came from years of restraint finally cracking. "He's trying to scare you," Ethan said, his voice low. "It won't work." Clara swallowed hard. "He already did." Ethan took the phone from her, reading the message again as if the pixels themselves might reveal a way to fight back. "He must have realized you're staying with me. He's desperate." Her voice wavered. "You don't understand, Ethan. He doesn't make threats unless he's already planned something." He looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Back then, when I was pregnant, he didn't just want me gone. He wanted to erase me. He warned that if I ever resurfaced, he'd destroy me and you." She wrapped her arms around herself, her breath trembling. "He's not bluffing now." Ethan stepped forward, gripping her shoulders gently but firmly. "You're safe here. He's not touching you or the kids." Clara met his gaze, her eyes glistening with something between fear and faith. "You don't know him like I do." "I'm about to," Ethan said quietly. By morning, the penthouse felt heavier, its silence tense, aware. The twins played quietly in the living room, while Ethan sat on the phone with Marissa, pacing the floor. "Marissa, I need full surveillance around the building," he said. "Cameras, security logs, everything. If Richard's watching, I want to know how." Her voice crackled through the line. "Already on it, but you should know. News of your absence from yesterday's meeting leaked. The press is speculating about a family scandal." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Richard's feeding them. Most likely, if he's feeling cornered, he'll try to shift attention. Then we shift it back," Ethan said. "Find me every trace of his offshore transfers. I don't care how deep he buried them." Marissa hesitated. "Ethan, if we go public, this becomes more than a boardroom war. You'll be taking down the man who built your name." Ethan's tone hardened. "Then I'll build a new one." He hung up and turned toward the window. Outside, the world looked deceptively calm. A small voice broke the silence. "Daddy!" He turned. Emma stood by the door, holding her stuff bare, her expression uncertain. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, kneeling to her level. "What's wrong?" "You're mad," she said softly. "Mommy says when people get quiet like that, it means they're mad." Ethan smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "Not mad, baby. Just worried." "About Mommy?" He nodded. "Yeah, about Mommy." Emma's little brow furrowed, and then she did something that nearly undid him. She reached out and hugged his neck. "It's okay. You can worry together." He held her close, closing his eyes. The simplicity of her words cut through all the noise, grounding him in the one truth that mattered. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about protection. When Emma went back to play with Liam, Ethan turned to find Clara watching from the hallway. "She's always been good at reading people," Clara said softly. "She gets that from you," he replied. Clara smiled faintly, but the worry didn't leave her face. "Ethan, maybe we should leave the city, just for a little while." He frowned. "You think running will stop him?" "I think he's unpredictable, and I don't want to find out what he's capable of." Ethan shook his head. "No, this time we don't run." "Then at least let me protect them," she said, nodding toward the twins. He stepped closer. "You already are." That evening, Ethan met Marissa at a quiet cafe uptown. Rain slicked the windows, the city outside distorted into streaks of light. She slid a file across the table. "You were right," she said. "Richard's been laundering through at least 3 dummy corporations. The paper trail is clean, but the timing lines up with your company's missing funds." Ethan scanned the documents, his pulse steady. "This is enough to open a case?" Marissa nodded. "If we leak it carefully." "But Ethan," she leaned closer, "if Richard feels cornered, he'll come after you personally, maybe even through the kids." Ethan's jaw tightened. Then I'll make sure he never gets the chance. When he returned home that night, the penthouse lights were dimmed. Clara was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hands. She looked up as he entered. Did you find anything? He nodded. Enough to take him down. Her shoulders eased for a moment, then her phone buzzed again. She froze. Ethan saw her expression and crossed the room in 2 strides. Clara? She turned the screen toward him. Another message. You can't protect what doesn't belong to you. The sender's name was gone, replaced by an anonymous number. But the threat was clear. Ethan's voice was a low growl. He's watching us. She swallowed. What are we going to do? He looked around the room, the glass walls, the cameras, the skyline beyond. First, he said, we take the twins somewhere safe. Then we end this. Clara's voice trembled. Ethan, don't. He turned to her, eyes fierce but steady. I promised you I wouldn't become him. I meant it, but I'm not letting him win again. The storm outside deepened, lightning flashing over the city. For a moment, it illuminated Ethan's reflection in the glass. Haunted, determined, unbreakable. He wasn't the man Richard had raised. He was the man who would finally bring him down. Ethan hadn't felt this kind of silence in years, the heavy kind that settled before a storm. The penthouse was dark except for the faint glow of the city outside. He stood by the window, watching the lights flicker against the clouds, his mind turning over the same thought again and again. Richard had made this personal. The messages, the threats, the manipulation. It wasn't about the company anymore. It was about control. Richard had lost his grip, and he wanted Ethan to pay for it. Behind him, Clara appeared in the reflection, her robe drawn tight around her. You haven't moved in an hour, she said softly. I'm waiting, he replied without turning. For what? For him to make the next move. She stepped closer, her reflection joining his. You can't live like this, waiting for him to strike. You'll destroy yourself. He finally turned to face her. I've spent half my life letting him decide what happens next. Not anymore. Her eyes softened with fear. And what happens when he decides to use us again? When he goes after Emma and Liam? Ethan's expression hardened. Then he'll learn what it means to lose everything. The next morning, Marissa called. Her tone was urgent. Ethan, Richard's already covering his tracks. I checked the accounts again. He's liquidating assets under your name. Ethan's hand tightened around his phone. How much? Enough to frame you for embezzlement if he pushes it. Then we go public before he can. Marissa hesitated. You sure you want to do that? Once this goes out, there's no undoing it. The board, the press, everyone will see the Cole family war play out in real time. Ethan's voice was steady. I'm done hiding. Prepare the release. I'll sign it myself. When he hung up, Clara was standing in the doorway, pale. You're going to expose him. Yes. She shook her head. Ethan, that will destroy the company. It's already destroyed, he said. I'm just burning the rot out. Her voice cracked. And what about your name? The legacy your father built? He looked at her for a long moment. A legacy that was built on lies isn't worth keeping. By afternoon, the city buzzed with whispers. News channels picked up leaks from the legal office. Cryptic reports of financial irregularities within Cole Industries. Social media exploded with speculation. Names half guessed, stories half told. Ethan watched it unfold from his office. Calm on the surface but restless beneath. Marissa's text came through minutes later. It's out. The documents are public. Richard won't be able to spin this. He exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. But only for a moment. Clara appeared in the doorway. Ethan, there's someone downstairs asking for you. He frowned. Who? She hesitated. He wouldn't say. Just be careful. Ethan nodded and headed to the lobby. The man waiting there wasn't Richard. It was one of his men. Clean cut, expensive suit, eyes like steel. He smiled thinly. Mr. Cole, I come with a message. Ethan folded his arms. You can tell him I got it the first time. Oh, this one's different. The man's smile didn't change. He says if you want to see your family safe, you'll stop whatever you're planning. Ethan's blood ran cold. You're threatening my children? Not threatening, the man said calmly. Warning, The world is full of accidents. Fires, car troubles, misplaced people. You wouldn't want something like that, would you? Before Ethan could respond, security stepped in. The man handed over a sealed envelope, nodded once, and walked out like nothing had happened. Ethan tore the envelope open. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, taken from a distance. Clara and the twins walking hand in hand near Central Park. Across the bottom, scrawled in Richard's elegant handwriting, were 5 words: "You can't protect them forever." That night, Clara found Ethan packing a small bag. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Getting you out of here." "Ethan, you can't." He turned, his voice sharp but trembling. "He knows where you've been. He sent me a picture of you and the kids." Her face went pale. "Oh my God." "You'll stay at Marissa's place upstate. She's already agreed. I'll finish this from here." Clara shook her head. "I'm not leaving you to fight him alone." "You have to," he said, stepping closer. "If he can't reach me, he'll go after you. I can't let that happen again." Tears welled in her eyes. "You think sending us away will stop him? He'll just find another way to hurt you." Ethan took her hands, his voice breaking. "Then at least he won't have you to use." For a long moment they stood in silence, the sound of the city muffled beyond the glass. Finally Clara whispered, "Promise me you'll come back." He managed a faint, tired smile. "You're the only reason I will." Hours later, Ethan watched from the curb as Marissa's driver pulled away, Clara and the twins visible through the tinted windows. Emma waved. Liam pressed his face against the glass. Ethan raised a hand, forcing himself to smile until they were gone. Then he turned back toward the building, his reflection mirrored in the glass doors, alone again, but no longer the same man who had once stood powerless beneath Richard's shadow. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Marissa," he said when she answered. "It's time. Call the DA. We're taking Richard down." The storm was here now, and this time Ethan wasn't running from it. He was walking straight through. The city didn't sleep that night, and neither did Ethan. From his office window, he could see the pulse of Manhattan glowing through the storm. Lightning forked over the skyline, illuminating a world built on glass and greed, one he'd helped shape and now planned to dismantle. The documents were ready. Every falsified audit, every offshore transfer, every email Richard thought was buried had been compiled into a single devastating file. Marissa's team had verified it all, proof strong enough to destroy Richard's empire and clear Ethan's name forever. But there was one problem. Richard had vanished. Marissa's voice echoed through the speakerphone. "His office is empty. The security logs show he left 3 hours ago, and his private driver says he was dismissed early. No one's seen him since." Ethan rubbed his temples. "He's running, or planning something worse." "Ethan, listen to me. This isn't just about money anymore. The threats, the message. He's unraveling. You need to get somewhere safe." "I'm not hiding." Marissa sighed. "Then at least don't do this alone." He looked out into the storm, his reflection fractured in the glass. "I'm not." By morning, the storm had broken, leaving the city raw and washed clean. Ethan barely noticed. He was buried in phone calls, statements, and press drafts, finalizing the release that would expose Richard's crimes. But his focus broke when his phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. "You've made your move. Now it's mine." Ethan's pulse kicked. He called Marissa immediately. "He's reaching out again." "I'll trace it," she said. "Just don't respond. If he's watching, we need to see how far he'll go." He hung up, but something in the pit of his stomach refused to settle. Minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't Marissa, it was Clara. "Ethan," her voice was trembling. "There's someone outside the house." His chest tightened. "Where are the twins?" "In their room. I've locked the door, but he's in the driveway. I think it's Richard." Ethan was already moving, grabbing his keys, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Stay on the line. Don't move. I'm coming." "Ethan, no. If it is him, you can't." But he was already gone, the elevator doors closing around him. The drive to Marissa's upstate property took just under an hour, though to Ethan it felt like years compressed into minutes. Rain whipped against the windshield, the highway a blur of gray and white. Every red light was agony. every passing car a threat. When he reached the long stretch of wooded road leading to the house, the gates stood open. The security lights were out. "Clara?" he said into the phone. No answer. He slammed on the brakes and jumped out, the cold biting his skin. The front door hung ajar. Inside, the house was dark except for the faint glow of a lamp in the hall. "Clara," he called. "Emma! Liam!" A noise, metal against tile, came from the kitchen. He moved toward it slowly, every nerve on fire. "Ethan," a voice drawled from the shadows. "Always so dramatic." Richard stepped into the dim light, smiling like a man who owned the world. His tailored coat was soaked, his silver hair slicked back, his eyes gleaming with venom. "You should have stayed out of this," Richard said. "You could have had everything. The company, the power, the world believing you were the hero." Ethan's fist clenched. "Where are they?" "They're fine," Richard said smoothly. "For now, but that depends on you. Don't you dare touch them." Richard chuckled, still sentimental. "You never learned, Ethan. Family is leverage, not love." Ethan stepped closer. "That's why you'll never understand what you've already lost." Richard's smirk faded slightly. "You think you can destroy me with a few files? You have no idea what you're playing with." "I know exactly what I'm doing." Ethan's voice was low, steady. "And when this is over, you'll never hurt anyone again." Richard's hand moved inside his coat. For a moment, Ethan's blood froze, but instead of a weapon, Richard pulled out a phone. "You expose me," he said softly, "and this goes to the press. Videos, doctored evidence, everything needed to make you the villain. You'll lose everything, Ethan, and she'll watch you fall." Ethan stared at him, every instinct screaming, "You won't get that chance." He lunged forward, grabbing Richard's wrist. The phone clattered to the floor as they collided, the struggle spilling across the room. Years of rage boiled over. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment stolen by the man who had poisoned his life. "You took my family," Ethan hissed. Richard snarled, shoving back. "You were never meant to have one." Their fight crashed into the hall, knocking over a chair, shattering glass. The phone buzzed on the floor, its screen flashing. Clara's name lit up. Both men froze for a split second. Ethan seized the opening, one hard punch, fueled by 6 years of silence and loss. Richard crumpled to the ground, dazed. Ethan snatched the phone and answered. "Clara!" Her voice came through, breathless but steady. "The twins are with me. We're safe. I called the police." Relief hit him like oxygen. "Stay outside. I'm ending this." By the time sirens cut through the distance, Richard was conscious again but cornered. He looked up from the floor, his arrogance finally cracked. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "The world still believes I built you." Ethan stood over him. "Then the world's about to see what you really built." As flashing lights filled the doorway, Ethan turned toward them, exhaling for the first time in what felt like years. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. He only knew this. His family was safe, and for once, the truth was louder than the lies. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy with aftermath. Police lights flickered across the driveway of Marissa's estate, painting the soaked ground in pulses of red and blue. Officers moved briskly through the halls, gathering evidence, taking statements. The night that had felt endless was finally breaking into morning, but Ethan's mind couldn't rest. He stood by the front window, his clothes torn, knuckles scraped, the echoes of the fight still pulsing through him. In the reflection, Richard's face flashed behind his eyes. The rage, the disbelief, the moment the sirens had silenced him for good. "Mr. Cole," an officer said, approaching, "we're taking your uncle into custody now. He'll be charged with corporate fraud, money laundering, and attempted extortion. Your lawyer confirmed everything checks out." Ethan nodded stiffly. "Good." The officer hesitated. "You did the right thing, sir." Ethan gave a hollow smile. "Maybe, but it shouldn't have taken this long." Clara appeared at the top of the stairs, a blanket around her shoulders. Her face was pale but calm, her movements slow and deliberate, as if each one was weighed against fear. When their eyes met, the exhaustion in both of them cracked into something like relief. "They said it's over," she whispered. He turned toward her. It is. He's gone, Clara. She walked down the steps, stopping just before him. Gone isn't the same as fixed. Ethan's voice softened. No, but it's a start. For a moment, neither spoke. The house was still except for the muffled voices outside. Clara's gaze fell to his bruised hand, and she reached for it gently. You could have been killed. I wasn't, he said quietly. Because you called. Because you were brave enough to fight back. She shook her head. I was terrified. He met her eyes. So was I. The twins came running down the hall then, still in their pajamas, faces lit with confusion and relief. Mommy! Daddy! Ethan knelt, arms open. They collided into him, laughter and tears mixing as they squeezed tightly around his neck. For the first time, he didn't worry about what he was supposed to say. He just held them. Emma pulled back, frowning at his bruises. You got hurt. Just a little, he said with a smile. But it's okay now. We're all safe. Liam looked up at him seriously. Did you beat the bad guy? Ethan chuckled softly. Something like that. Clara stood behind them, her eyes glistening. It wasn't victory that filled her expression. It was gratitude, quiet and fragile. The kind that came after too many nights wondering if peace would ever come. So hours later, when the police had gone and the house had returned to stillness, Marissa arrived. She looked tired but composed, a folder in her hand. It's done, she said. The board has seen the evidence. Richard's assets are frozen, and the DA's office is preparing charges. He won't be walking away from this. Ethan exhaled slowly. And the company? You're in control now, she said, then added gently, if you want to be. He stared at the folder, the weight of the years pressing down again. I built everything to prove I could be better than him. Now that I have it, I don't even want it. Marissa nodded. Then build something new. When she left, Clara joined him by the window, watching the sun rise over the distant hills. The first light cut through the mist, soft and gold. You could sell it, she said quietly. Walk away, start over. I've thought about it, he admitted. The company's worth billions, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. Maybe it never did. Clara turned to him, her voice gentle but firm. You always wanted to change the world, Ethan. Maybe now you finally can, just in a different way. He looked at her, and in her eyes he saw the same woman he'd fallen for years ago, the one who believed in doing good even when the world didn't. What about you? He asked. What do you want? She smiled faintly. Peace. For them. For us. He reached for her hand. Then that's what we'll build. Later that evening, after the twins had fallen asleep upstairs, Ethan sat outside on the porch. The sky was clear for the first time in days, stars scattered like fragments of something once broken, but still beautiful. Clara joined him, a mug of tea in her hands. You should rest, she said. I will, he murmured. Just thinking. About Richard, he nodded. About how close I came to becoming him. You didn't, she said softly. You chose differently. He stared out at the horizon. He always said family was weakness. That love made people stupid. Clara smiled faintly. Then maybe we should all be a little stupid sometimes. Ethan turned to her, his expression softening. You saved me from him. Again. No, she said. You saved yourself this time. For a long while they sat in silence, the night breathing softly around them. Somewhere inside, the twins stirred in their sleep, their laughter echoing faintly through the house. Ethan looked at Clara and said quietly, Tomorrow I'm going to make it right. All of it. The company, the money. I'll use it to fix what he broke, to build something that matters. She nodded. That sounds like the man I remember. He reached out, brushing his thumb across her hand. No, it sounds like the man you helped me become. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain and pine. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like he could breathe. The storm was over, but the rebuilding, the healing that was just beginning. Spring came early that year. The snow melted faster than anyone expected, and for the first time in months, the park near Ethan's penthouse was filled with laughter, color, and life. Children ran through puddles, street musicians played, and the world seemed determined to start fresh. Ethan stood on that same path where everything had begun, where he'd first seen Clara on the bench with the twins, shivering beneath the glow of a street lamp. The memory felt distant now, like a ghost from another life. He looked down at his reflection in the puddle by his shoes. No tailored suit, no watch worth a small fortune. Just a man who'd finally stepped out of the shadow of his name. Behind him came familiar voices, small, bright, full of promise. "Daddy, wait up!" He turned just in time for Emma and Liam to barrel into him, each clutching an ice cream cone that was already melting down their fingers. Clara followed, shaking her head with a smile that warmed him more than the sunlight ever could. "You said one scoop," she teased. Ethan grinned. "They negotiated." "They take after you," she said, rolling her eyes. He crouched down and wiped the twins' sticky hands with a napkin, laughing when Liam tried to smear chocolate across his cheek. "Truce, mister. Your mom's watching." Emma giggled. "Mommy says you can't win against us." "She's right," he said, straightening up. "I stopped trying the day you both learned how to talk." They sat together on a park bench, the same one that had once been a symbol of loss. Now it was something else entirely, a quiet witness to everything they had rebuilt. Clara leaned against him, her voice soft. "You really think you can walk away from all of it? The company, the board, the power?" Ethan nodded. "I already did. The board voted this morning. I'm stepping down." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Just like that?" "Just like that," he said. "Richard's trial starts next month. The evidence speaks for itself. Coal Industries will survive without me, and maybe it'll finally do some good." Clara smiled faintly. "You sound like your father." Ethan laughed quietly. "That's funny. I used to spend my whole life trying not to." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the city softening into background music. Birds chattered above them. The air smelled like rain and possibility. "So what now?" she asked. He looked toward the twins, who were chasing pigeons near the fountain. "Now we build something new." Clara tilted her head. "A company?" He shook his head. "A foundation for families like the one I almost lost. Scholarships, shelters, support for single parents. The first project will be here, in this city, the one that gave me everything and took everything back until I learned what really mattered." Her eyes softened. "You mean us?" He smiled. "I mean you." That evening, as the sun began to set, they returned to the penthouse, though it didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like home. The sharp lines of luxury had softened, replaced by warmth, drawings taped to the fridge, toys scattered near the couch, a piano covered in fingerprints from Emma's music lessons. Ethan poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to Clara. "You know, I've been thinking about that book you used to write." She blinked. "You remember that?" "How could I forget? You said you were going to write about ordinary people who did extraordinary things." Her lips curved. "I never finished it." "Maybe now's the time," he said. "You've lived an extraordinary story." She laughed softly. "Only because you were in it." He reached across the table and took her hand. "No, because you never gave up on it." Later that night, when the twins had gone to bed, Ethan sat at the piano. The city outside glittered against the dark, and the familiar melody of Clara's favorite song filled the room. He hadn't played it since before she left all those years ago, but now it came easily, as if the music had been waiting for this moment. Clara appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You remembered." He smiled. "I never forgot." She walked closer, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. "You've changed." "So have you," he said. "Maybe that's why we finally found our way back." He looked up at her, eyes warm. "No maybes about it." A week later, Ethan stood on a small stage in front of a modest crowd. Reporters, donors, and families filled the hall for the launch of the Cole Evans Foundation. Cameras flashed, but for once, Ethan didn't feel like a spectacle. He felt like a man with purpose. He cleared his throat, the microphone humming softly. 6 years ago, I believed success was something you could measure. Money, power, control. But then life reminded me that everything worth having can't be bought. It has to be built, brick by brick, forgiveness by forgiveness. He glanced toward the front row where Clara sat with Emma and Liam, their faces glowing with pride. This foundation, he continued, isn't about me. It's about second chances, about the people who keep going even when the world turns cold. Because sometimes the ones who've lost everything are the ones who know how to build it back stronger. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was real. Clara met his gaze and smiled, the kind of smile that told him he was exactly where he was meant to be. That night they walked home through the city lights, the twins skipping ahead. The world felt vast, but for once, Ethan didn't feel small inside it. He looked at Clara, his voice soft. "We made it." She squeezed his hand. "No, Ethan, we're just beginning." And as they reached the park, the same place where their story had started, Ethan looked up at the skyline, glowing against the night. This time, he didn't see the city that broke him. He saw the one they had rebuilt together.